It's time for sports.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of LTCC Sports. I'm Cailin Burke.
And I'm Sala. We have yet another packed show for you all today, including the start of the NHL season, a recap of the Masters, and a look into the life of a Major League Baseball scout. But first, the NBA regular season ended last night, and the playoff picture is finally set. The first round of the playoffs looks to have some very intriguing matchups, but the one I like the most, Cailin, is the Cavaliers versus Celtics, and here's why. The Cavaliers, they were supposed to tank this year, and especially after trading Rajon Rondo, you thought, they're focused on the lottery, they're focused on this year's draft. But they brought in Jay Crowder, who's provided good scoring depth off the bench for them. And then at the deadline, they were still hanging around, so they decided to go out and get potential sixth man of the year, Isaiah Thomas, and he's really provided a great spark off the bench for the Celtics. And then on the Cavs side, they brought in some good acquisitions throughout the year, but what I'm most intrigued about is Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. They have no playoff experience, and they're two of the three main guys behind LeBron for the Cavs. So, you don't know how they're going to do in their first series under the bright lights.
Yeah, I definitely like that matchup in the East too. Another matchup to look out for in the Western Conference, I think, is between the Golden State Warriors and the New Orleans Pelicans. The last time these two played, the Warriors, they lost. Pelicans defeated them 103-100, and the Pelicans, they lost the past two games against the Warriors before that. One was decided in overtime, so this would be a really good one. And if you just look at the Warriors this season, it's not just all about Steph Curry. You've got Harrison Barnes, Klay Thompson, Andrew Bogut, Justin Holiday. There's Holiday right there. They're all contributing to this team. And even though Golden State does have the top seed and Pelicans, they're at the number 8 seed, I wouldn't discount the Pelicans just yet. They beat the Spurs last night, 108-103, and the Spurs, they were on an 11-game winning streak, and also the Spurs had a better record than the Pelicans going in. So basically, Pelicans, they just defeated that winning streak last night. Anthony Davis was outstanding last night. He had 31 points, 13 rebounds, and it'll also be his playoff debut, so another exciting reason to watch. And New Orleans, they're getting hot at just the right time, while the Warriors, they're having their best franchise season so far, so both teams are really exciting to watch. And also, the NBA MVP has many potential suitors, but going off of my most exciting team to watch, Golden State Warriors, I would have to say my MVP is Steph Curry. He had 286 three-pointers this season. That's that NBA record for most three-pointers in a season. And he has a 44% success rate for three-pointers. He's averaging 2 steals a game, and his free throw percentage is just crazy. It's 91.4%. That tops the NBA this season. I could just keep going on with the stats forever, but I don't know if you heard about what he did on Tuesday. He actually hit 77 three-pointers in a row during practice. And so that was not only his personal record, but, his teammates, they were like, wow, that is basically impossible. So
yeah, that's pretty incredible. He's 77 out of 100, or 77 straight, and 94 out of 100 in practice. And as Allen Iverson would say, practice. But the reason I like Stephen Curry for the MVP is because he's the clear leader of this Golden State Warriors team. He led them to a 67-15 record, which is the best record in franchise history, and that made them only the 10th team in NBA history to win 67-plus games. You mentioned the stats, but his stats are a little down from the last couple years, mostly because Golden State has been blowing out teams, Eastern Conference, Western Conference teams, whoever they're playing, and this is a guy, he sat out 18 for entire fourth quarters. So imagine his numbers with those stats.
So you have him over Harden for sure.
Over Harden, Westbrook, LeBron, definitely sticking with Curry.
Yep, me too, I agree.
I'm at Tennis Pavilion, and coming up, I'll have a report on the Marist women's tennis team as they look to finish their season strong before the MAC tournament.
Back to LTCC Sports. After a very successful NHL regular season for New York hockey teams, the 2015 playoffs kicked off last night, and the Islanders traveled to our nation's capital to take on the Washington Capitals last night for Game 1 of their playoff battle. Game 1 from D.C., the Islanders looked to take Game 1 away from Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals. And 6 minutes into the game, Josh Bailey finds Brock Nelson on the right side. He beats Braden Holtby to kick off the scoring in the playoffs, and even more importantly, gives the Islanders the early 1-0 lead. But right after that, the Capitals would answer. About a minute left in the first period, Islander goalie Yaroslav Halak, he turns the puck over to Brooks Leash, who finds Marcus Johansson and beats Halak to even the score at 1. Now to the second, off of a John Tavares face-off win, Ryan Strome, he roofs a wrist shot over Holtby's shoulder, gives the Islanders a 2-1 lead. Now, Holtby, he had no chance to stop the laser wrist shot, and this was Strome's first career playoff goal as well. The Islanders would continue the solid attack as Kyle Oxposo's initial shot is saved, and it's the rebound goal by Josh Bailey that crosses the goal line to put the Islanders up by 2. Bailey's just cleaning up the garbage in front of the net, and as you can see, the puck barely gets over the goal line, and after the review, the goal is confirmed. Islanders would then add an empty netter with under 90 seconds left to win Game 1 of the series 4-1. And 3 other playoff games were played last night. Montreal, they defeated Ottawa 4-3, Calgary beat Vancouver 2-1, and Chicago, they snuck by Nashville 4-3 in double overtime.
The New York Rangers play their first game of the season tonight at home against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The puck drops at 7 o'clock, and the top-seeded Rangers have some high expectations. Most of those expectations will fall on the shoulders of forward Rick Nash, who led the Rangers in points this season with 69. Alongside Nash, recent acquisition defenseman Keith Yandel should provide the Rangers with even more offense, certainly enough to put the puck past Penguins goalie Marc-Andre Fleury. New York hockey fans have something to cheer about this postseason.
And now to Marist Sports. The Marist women's tennis team just had their senior day, and our very own Dan Girolamo was able to check out the action.
The Marist women's tennis team got off to a rocky start in 2015 as they lost their first 8 matches of the season. It was not until the team entered conference play where they began to hit their stride. Freshman Elizabeth Brozovic talked about the rough beginning to the season.
A really tough schedule. During the beginning of our season, we played like UMass, UConn, and some really tough teams, Cornell. And then we started getting into more of our conference matches. So now we have a winning record in the conference, and we're really starting to see our record improve.
Go Marist! Go Marist!
The team is now 4-1 in the MAC Conference, which is good enough for 3rd place in the standings. Senior Sabrina Tahir and junior Katie Seitz discussed the strengths of the team and the reasons behind the turnaround.
I think everyone is a pretty good grinder on the court. No matter what the situation is, everyone takes it to the very last point and gives it their all.
Really have good positive attitudes on the court, and we all like to fight hard, and we're all really fit. We're one of the fittest teams because we condition very hard.
The goal for the team is to win the MAC championship, but for some members of the team, playing tennis with your teammates is just as rewarding.
I would love to win Max, but I just like to go out with some good memories at this point.
1, 2, 3, yes!
The Red Foxes have 2 games left on their schedule against Niagara and Monmouth before the start of the MAC tournament, which begins next Friday in West Windsor, New Jersey. Reporting from Tennis Pavilion at Marist College, Dan Girolamo, LTCC Sports.
All right, Cailin, that was a great job by Dan, who sat down with the women's tennis team. The women's tennis team wrapping up their season. They played a bunch of tournaments this year and last semester, and they're looking to get ready for MACs in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've got a lot of good things in store for them, and we'll definitely have to check back in with Dan to see what's going on with them in the future.
Ever wonder what life is like as an MLB scout? When we come back, I sit down with the mayor's security guard who doubles as an MLB scout. Every MLB player was once just a prospect who caught the eye of a scout. We talked to mayor's security guard Mark Barron, who is also an MLB scout, about this process.
For the amateur side of scouting, what we do is we go out and we see high school and college players that are eligible for the draft, and we report on those players. We need to get all of our reports in, usually by the middle of May, towards the end of May, with the draft coming in June.
I talked to Marist outfielder and MLB hopeful Graham McIntyre about the presence of scouts at his games and how it affects him.
Kind of motivates you to play a little bit harder, a little bit smarter.
Every prospect dreams of being selected in the MLB draft. But how do scouts decide if a player has MLB talent, you may ask? As Mark Barron explains, they use a rating metric known as the 20-80 scale.
Just think of it as this way. a 50, if a player has a 50 in terms of a tool, whether it's hit, power, fastball, whatever it may be, 50 is major league average. And examples of a 50 tool would be someone in the major leagues who hits 260 to 269. That's an average major league hitter.
I asked McIntyre about his understanding of the scale.
Yeah, so 2080 scale, ranking you about how good of a professional baseball player you potentially will be and how good you are at that moment. I know our coach had us do it early in the fall, ranking ourselves.
Sabermetrics, made famous by Oakland A's GM Billy Beane, is a mathematical and statistical analysis of baseball records. We asked Mark how it has changed MLB scouting.
Every scout is different, every organization is different, and different organizations will use those tools the best way that they see fit. One organization may use sabermetrics more than another.
Marist College outfielder Graham McIntyre is hoping to continue his stellar play this year and catch the eyes of many scouts. He's currently batting .313 with a .425 on-base percentage. For LTCC Sports, I'm Connor Ford.
The MLB season has gotten underway, and several teams have come out of the gate hot, while others have started off struggling. The Miami Marlins are one of those many struggling teams, and they're now sitting at 3-6. You know, the Marlins coming into the year, they spent a lot of money on their young players, and those young players have yet to provide anything good for the Marlins. You know, they just lost Henderson Alvarez to the DL, who's now joining young ace Jose Fernandez. They're not going to get those guys back till at least the summer. And more importantly, their outfielders have yet to hit. They're combined 4 extra base hits and 0 home runs, all batting under 260. And, you know, this is an outfield that they spent over $360 million on this offseason.
And now on the other side of the coin, one of the most impressive teams thus far has been the reigning American League champs, the Kansas City, until last night against the Minnesota Twins. I mean, prior to that, they were 7-0, and yeah, they did lose last night, 3-1 against the Twins, but I mean, they were the last team to lose a game this whole season. And look at their offense prior to last night. They averaged 7.4 runs per game this season, and they outscored their opponents 52-18. And that makes them currently the highest scoring team in the majors. And they did lose their ace, James Shield, but their pitching staff is doing just fine without him. Stepping aside from teams, several players across the league have been making splashes so far this season. And one in particular has been Los Angeles Dodgers first baseman Adrian Gonzalez, who's currently leading the MLB in home runs with 5. He also had a 3-homer game last Wednesday, and they were all solo home runs off of Padres pitcher Andrew Kashner. Last night, he continued his streak. It wasn't just a one-time thing. He hit 2 for 5 last night against the Mariners, and he's the first player to reach 19 hits.
Moving on to the American League now, the Detroit Tigers right fielder J.D. Martinez has been very impressive so far, hitting 4 home runs and knocking in 9 RBIs in his first 8 games. Cailin, this is a guy who last year in his first season with the Tigers set career highs in runs, hits, doubles, home runs, RBIs, and stolen bases, all while batting a career-high .315. And it's the season last year he was overshadowed by Victor Martinez, who finished second in MVP voting. And, you know, perhaps he likes flying under the radar, these stats. He's quietly second in the American League in both home runs and RBIs, and he's doing this all while under the shadow of Yoenis Cespedes, Ian Kinsler, Miguel Cabrera, and Alex Avila.
Yeah, he is really looking great. And now for the New York Mets, they completed the sweep of the Philadelphia Phillies last night in a 3-game series at Citi Field. And Game 1 was a good old-fashioned pitcher's duel. Jacob deGrom, he was starting for the Mets, reigning National League Rookie of the Year. He started off sharp, striking out Ben Revere to start the game. Chase Utley, he suffered the same fate shortly after. Now, Aaron Harang on the hill for the Phillies, still scoreless in the 4th when Lagares knocks it back to Harang. Daniel Murphy scores, and Curtis Granderson's up here in the 5th. He sends a line drive to left field, and Revere sprints to make that acrobatic diving catch. Look at it here in slow motion. He's parallel to the ground, and Harang, he loves it. Now top of the 7th, Phillies are threatening, but Torres, he freezes Revere for the strikeout. Mets take it 2-0, and on to Game 2. The Dark Knight, Matt Harvey, he took the start for the Mets, and Chase Utley took the fourth pitch he saw. It went right into the bleachers. Game tied at 1 in the second, and the bases were loaded for Lucas Duda. He lines the ball down the right field line. Lagares scores, Wilmer scores, and Curtis Granderson, he sprints from first and scores. Moving on now, it is 4-3 Mets, top of the fifth. Harvey nails Chase Utley with a 95-mile-per-hour fastball. Both benches get warned. Tensions are pretty high. And next batter, Ryan Howard, he gets called for catcher interference, and the Mets manager, Terry Collins, he gets called out of the game. Look at him here. And finally, Yuri's Familia, he closes on Jeff Francoeur. He sends a rocket deep into the seats, but Familia, he fans Odubel Herrera to end it 6-5, Mets final score.
The Yankees finished up a 3-game set with the Baltimore Orioles last night and lost the series 2-1. Starting off in the first game, Y.N. Chen getting the start for the Orioles. Here in the top of the second inning, facing outfielder Chris Young, boom, sends it over the left field bleachers to put the Yankees up 1-0. His second of the season. Later in the fourth, Yankees down 1. Mark Teixeira, mashed potatoes. He's going to touch them all, and the game is now tied at 2 apiece. Now in the seventh, Jacoby Ellsbury hits a chopper that squeaks by Tommy Hunter, and he beats out the throw, leaving the bases juice for Stephen Drew, who says, "Hey, I know how to hit now." Drew with the grand salami puts the Yankees back up 6-4. The O's would add one more, and the Pinstripes won 6-5. Now game 2. CC Sabathia on the mound to Adam Jones. Tell Mama he's going to be early for dinner because he's coming all the way home. Caleb Joseph at the plate now, and he singles to right field. Close play at the plate, but Delman Young is able to avoid the tag and put the O's up 3-0. But this game was all about Miguel Gonzalez, as the right-hander fanned 10 and allowed just 1 run. Yankees threatening in the 8th, Mark Teixeira goes oppo, and Alejandro Diaz drops a can of corn. Chase Headley comes around to score, and the Yankees are down 1. The rally would end there, however, as Brian McCann grounded into the shift to end the game. Birds take it 4-3.
And now we're going to take a short break, but when we get back, we'll recap last weekend's action, including the Masters tournament and the Frozen Four championship game. Welcome back to LTCC Sports. The 4th round of the Masters came and went this past Sunday, but not without a performance for the ages by Jordan Spieth. Spieth entered the 4th and final round of the tournament at 16 under, 4 strokes ahead of Justin Rose for the lead, while Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, they sat tied at 4-. Now let's get right to the action. Tiger Woods starts out here on the 9th hole, par 4, and he does get the ball to the green, but he appears to have injured himself on the shot. After the round, Tiger said that he, quote, hit a tree root with his iron and a ligament in his rib popped out of place, but he was able to pop it back into place shortly thereafter. That's some toughness. Now McIlroy, he is here on par 4, 11th hole, and he hits the birdie to drop 9 under. Now Hideki Matsuyama, he nails the eagle putt on the 13th hole, and that moves him to 10 under. Now Woods on to the 13th, still nursing that wrist injury, but he gets the eagle shot to drop. And look at it go. He's happy about that one. Now Jordan Spieth, he saw his only slip-up of the day on the 12th hole. He misses it right there for the attempt for par. But there was no catching Spieth on this one. Next hole, he hits a beautiful approach shot, resting the ball 10 yards from the hole. And then Spieth, he would make the easy birdie right there. And he goes on to win it. Finally, the 21-year-old can let out a sigh of relief. And he is so happy. He is the second youngest player in history to win that, and he gets the green jacket from last year's tournament champion Bubba Watson. Now, after the Masters, here's what he had to say about the victory.
It's incredible. It's one of the best feelings I've ever felt. This was arguably the greatest day of my life.
And, of course, it's the best day of his life. He's just 21 years old, and he's already Masters champion. Here's a look at the records Spieth broke this weekend.
Marist Football's annual Red and White Spring Game is this upcoming weekend, and our Vinny Fuschetto was able to get an inside look on the preparation, that and more when we return.
This is Vinny Fuschetto live from McCann Center covering spring football and spring practice for the Marist College football team.
Early morning wake-up calls is something a Red Fox football player knows about. Their motto this spring is ears up.
We got the soft route here in 13.
Yeah. 5 days a week, 5 hours each day, the players and coaches spend in meetings, lifts, and practices, preparing themselves for a run at another PFL championship.
So what do you want to see out of the younger players in the spring game Saturday evening?
Just basically that they can ball, going into the spring game, a lot of them are excited because it's like their big shot to show the coaches and the older kids what they can do and how hard they've worked, and it's a big moment for them.
Red Foxes are young on offense and defense this year, so the spring game has a big impact on players' positions when it comes to the fall. Saturday evening at Tenney Stadium, the annual Red-White spring game will take place. The white team took the win last year and will be looking for another win this year. The game is a player draft. 2 captains are in charge of each team and draft players Friday night in the McCann Center.
How much time is left? I think.
And it's also the last time you're putting on the pads till summer camp, so it's really just a lot about just getting back into the swing of things.
Best of luck to the red and white team in the scrimmage Saturday night. This is Vinny Fuschetto. Back to you guys.
This week's show. I'm Frank Sala.
And I'm Cailin Burke. Thanks for watching.
Good show.
Yeah.
The highlights.